Some people will take something to help their bowels to move, and they end up with diarrhea. And they think that, oh, I have diarrhea, so I'm doing excessive cleansing. Diarrhea is a form of constipation because the only thing you're losing is colored water mostly.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Adventures in Good Health. I'm your host, David Maloof, and you have entered Doc's Herbal Corner. This episode represents the first Doc's Herbal Corner that is in the form of a video in addition to podcast. And to help celebrate, before we get into the actual episode, I'm going to show you a little blast from the past. So what we have right here is an old television show. So you may not realize this, but Adventures in Good Health and Doc's Herbal Corner used to be a TV show the early part of this century. There's Doc. Look, I love the outfit. So Doc has been doing this for a very long time. And if you're interested in viewing his old episodes, they're all on YouTube. There'll be a link in the description. Okay, so now we're going to jump right in to Doc's Herbal Corner as Doc attempts to stump me with an herb I've never heard of. Hello, Doc. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Doc. What herb or which herb are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about Cascara Sagrada.
Oh, whoa. Wait a minute. Wait. Cascara?
Uh-huh.
Sagrada.
Two different words. Most people just say Cascara because there's no other herb that's named like that. You know.
Okay, so I was about to say, so we've done a number of these episodes of Doc's Herbal Corner. This is the first time you've mentioned an herb I've never heard of. So,
as we go deeper into the podcast,
yeah.
See, I'm doing the familiar stuff in the beginning.
Okay.
And then I can reach into my bag and come up with things that will have you looking like, who? What?
All right. Hey, that's what this podcast is all about.
Mm-hmm.
So, enlighten us.
Okay. Well, before I talk about the Cascara, in conjunction with that, I'm going to mention one of the things that Cascara helps with and why that's important.
Okay.
Cascara is an herb to help the bowels to move.
Okay.
So it's a laxative herb, to get the bowels to move. Now, why is that important? 90% of the diseases we suffer with, starts with dehydration, sleep deprivation, constipation, not necessarily in that order.
Right.
And the average patient that I see when I ask them as part of my protocol questions, how frequently is your bowel movement? And they say regular. And I say, what is regular? 2-3 times a week. And they're like, oh, God, that's not regular, Supposed to have bowel movement every day. No, that's unnatural to have bowel movement every day. 2-3 times a week, that's plenty. But when you digest food, there's a digestion, an assimilation, and should be elimination of the waste byproduct from the food you're eating, assuming that you eat something that the body actually digests.
Right.
Babies, when you feed babies, they're going to have bowel movement. Okay? Sometimes you can just wave food in front of them and they can really have bowel movement. If you have pets like dogs or cats, especially dogs, and you feed the dog, what do you got to do? Shortly afterward, you got to take that dog for a walk. So normal bowel movement should be at least once for every meal or a couple of times a day, good movement if we're not eating much that day. If we do not, that food sits in the body, the weight starts to expand, and then you have some horrific fermentation and spoiling. Kind of like if you cooked a meal and you had leftovers from that meal,
Right.
With the leftovers in a pot or Tupperware bowl. Tell my age when I say Tupperware bowl. But Tupperware bowl, you slide into the refrigerator. 3, 4 weeks later, you see that pot of Tupperware bowl. You don't even remember what was in it. But you know it's been in there so long, you don't even want to look.
Something is still, but it's still growing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
But it grows.
It's not good.
Yeah, and it grows in a refrigerator.
Yeah.
In a covered thing because, it fermented and spoiled, and you got all this fungus and white hair and bacteria and germs from food that's been left in the refrigerator.
And now, a quick word from our sponsor, Dr. Tates, Herbal Tinctures and Tonics. Dr. Tates offers the Herbal Blood Tonic, Doc's Detox, Herbal Male Tonic, Herbal Female Tonic, and the Herbal Fat Burner. If you would like to order your tonics or learn more information, you can go to drtates.online. And if you click the link in the description and enter the special promo code Adventures in Good Health 2024, you will receive 10% off your entire order. For more information, click the links below. And now, back to the show.
Fungus and white hair and bacteria and germs from food that's been left in the refrigerator too long. Now, that same kind of fermentation and spoiling goes on in our large and small intestines. Because, see, the inside of our body is a furnace. Now, the outside might be cold, poor circulation and stuff, which is a subject for another time, but that stuff ferments and spoils in our gut, in our intestinal areas, down there at our abdominal, navel area. It ferments and it spoils. And then it backs up into the system like a stopped-up sink. Because many a time, lung sinus issues come from a backup of waste that came from the intestinal area in the body. Because it's not moving out this way, so it's backing up into the system, starts to get into the blood, starts to saturate the whole body.
Okay.
90% of our conditions start with 4 or 5 different things. And poor bowel movement is right up there the list. Yeah, lack of water, sleep deprivation, breathing, all that stuff falls in there too. But constipation is right up there near the top. When you average that 2-3 bowel movement a day, you're storing poisons that could end up contributing to high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, memory and concentration problems, senility, mood shifts. It can just affect everything in the body as this stuff is backed up and spoiled in the body, which is why the laxative industry is such a multi-trillion-dollar business, because the average person is clogged and is constipated. Of course, a lot of the stuff that's on the market is junk, or temporary fix at best, but that accumulates, and it contributes to so many physical problems and mood shifts. And so we want to make sure that we're getting good bowel movement. So our listeners understand that, if you fall in that category of bowel movement every other day or small amounts once a day, well, you're acutely constipated. If you're going like 3-4 days on a regular basis, then you're chronically constipated. And then it fills up the intestines, and then there's no more room. So what happens when there's no more room to store that food waste that didn't get eliminated? We expand, it expand out. So that weight gain is not fat. It's stored up food waste and poisons and toxins. And I have some of my patients say, could you describe that differently? No, it's toxic waste. Just like
because it needs to expel from the body.
Yeah, it chokes the body. It backs up into the system So for our survival, it's got to be moved out of our body.
And my
on a
understanding
regular basis.
of that process also is that the longer it stays in your body, your body is going to try to draw liquid out, and it's not really being that successful. But that helps explain why some people have very uncomfortable bowel movements, because it's more solidified and drier than. And I'm not using medical terms, but that's my interpretation of that process.
It can get hot as concrete.
Yeah.
Okay. And it can stick to the linings in the intestines like glue, especially from what we're eating. And when you're 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 100 pounds overweight, that's old, fermented, toxic food waste. And the reason why I worded this way, because some people say, "Oh, I got the middle age spread," or it's just, as we get older, that we're going to gain that weight. But as we get older and we're gaining the weight, we put our body in danger. And people you see in the 70s, 80s, 90s that are pretty healthy and very active, they're smaller frame people. The older you get and the more weight you hold, the more you bring yourself to premature death because of that stored up stuff that gets everywhere and affects memory and concentration, because that same fermented food waste, it gets up in here. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's not a good place for stored up.
There's no good side. No good side. So you need to expel, and you need to expel on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And what happens is some people will say, "Well, I go, every other day or every 3 days, and I've been doing that for decades and decades. That's normal for me." And it sounds like what you're saying is that's not normal. That's not healthy
for anybody.
No,
it's not normal for anybody. I've heard some physicians say, "Well, everybody's bowels move different." Yeah, on a daily basis, but not on a weekly basis. So it's stored. Some signs from the body that tell you that is skin rashes and skin eruptions, because the body's trying to throw waste out through the skin, which is not effective. Gas and bloating, because it's storing up gas and stuff, because you can have solid waste, fluid, gas, more solid weight, fluid, gas, building up over the decades in the body, and starts to break down the system. So there's other things that would need to be done to help with the flushing, but our subject matter is on Cascara, okay? Now, the reason why I picked Cascara, because there's some other laxative herbs, but they could possibly be too strong. It makes some people feel like they're going into labor, because it's hitting that concrete, and there's a little silver wall going on the inside of your body trying to get stuff to move. Cascara is strong, but more gentle on the system, So it helps loosen up the waste, and then in turn it's helping the body be able to help itself by helping the body start to eliminate, what's stored in the body. When you go from 2-3 times a week or once, twice a week to every day, you're slowing down the aging, you're reversing the aging. That's an anti-aging process, because now you're removing stuff. There's other stuff we got to do, like drink water and stuff, obviously, and exercise and watch what you're eating. But you're starting a process that starts to bring back health or keep you from having nightmares down the road.
Okay. So is this like one way to describe this herb as nature's herbal laxative?
Yeah.
Could call it that.
That would be a perfect term. Yeah, that would be a perfect term.
Is it the root? Is it the leaf?
It's the bark.
Oh, it's the bark. Okay.
It's the bark of the tree.
I'm hearing your Boston accent, Doc. It's the bark.
Park the car in Harvard Yard. Yeah.
All right.
It cracks up.
I'll do this a little more Midwestern. It's the bark.
It's the bark.
All right.
It's the bark of the tree. It's not the root of the tree. It's the bark. It's the dried bark. And Cascara used to be listed in the medical journals as one of the things you would take, but I think it was back in a few years ago. It was taken off and has now been labeled as a supplement. But it was before listed as over-the-counter medicine. Okay, so it was in the PDRs and stuff, physician desk references, in the day. There were a bunch of herbs that was listed. But then they say, well, there's no scientific proof that Cascara will work. So take it, there'll be proof. But it says there's no scientific evidence. But that's a contradiction, because there's no scientific evidence because you've never wanted to do the scientific research. So of course there's no evidence because you refuse to research it. Because then that affects the pharmaceutical industry, because laxatives is always been like drugs for impotency, big cash cows.
Yeah.
And
because if you go into a drugstore or a grocery store, I mean, you'll see an entire section for laxatives,
all kinds of stuff,
and it's actually quite amazing the range and the variety, and some of them can work.
Some can work,
but sometimes they work a little too well. It causes other problems, or others. It's like you wait and you wait and you wait and you get impatient. You take a little more and you take a little more, and then boom!
Yeah, and then I want to add another thing before we go back into the Cascara, because this is setting the theme of why Cascara can be so good.
Right,
is that some people will take something to help their bowels to move, and they end up with diarrhea.
Right,
and they think that, oh, I have diarrhea, so I'm doing excessive cleansing. Diarrhea is a form of constipation, because the only thing you're losing is colored water, mostly. It's an irritation, like irritable bowel symptoms. It's an irritation, but it's not that solid movement type of thing.
All right. Well, that's a good clarification.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to go into the description of how it looks when it's in the commode to know that
right.
it's solid.
Thank you.
Cleanser. We won't go there. It's a PC kind of thing, but you would notice a difference, Now, the dried bark is what's used. It stimulates the bowels to move. It's like it's tickling the intestines, It's not like grabbing and trying to yank out of the system, which causes that cramping and stuff. Because you can take some laxatives that feel like you're delivering a baby, because it cramps you up so much. So it kind of tickles and kind of loosens up the muscles, loosens up the waste that's stuck on the muscles, excuse me, rephrase that, and it helps it move. It doesn't cause any cramping unless you get carried away. Now, I remember people that the Cascara, 2 to 4 a day, but not every day. I have people that do 2 to 3 times a day. Not good. Not good, because that's too harsh, and then the body's going to react and shut down. Because sometimes when you take something to help cleanse, like a laxative, like Cascara, and you do too much, the body out of self-defense shuts down the intestines. So now nothing's moving for a minute.
Okay, so you're saying, just so I understand, if you're saying that if someone takes too much of the Cascara, then that can cause problems as well.
That can do the reverse.
That does the reverse. All right, so does it... Go ahead.
No, well, go ahead.
Well, I was just curious. I mean, so what is the form that it comes in? Is it a powder? Does it come in capsules? Or
the best way to take it in capsules.
All right, come in capsules.
The veggie cap. Because of the tea, let's just say it has a unique flavor to it. And the best way to take the Cascara is the bark form that's been ground up into a powder and is in the veggie caps. Because then the veggie caps break up, when it comes across fluid inside the body, and it breaks up in your gut or your navel, your intestinal area, that starts having a little war, shaking it up and loosening the waste to help that to move. So it chemically stimulates the bowels to move, used to help empty the colon. Now, some people that say you're scheduled for a colonoscopy,
right,
in a few days, the Cascara can be really helpful because then you're moving out some of the waste, having extra waste moved out, which makes the whole colonoscopy experience, which is not really a great experience, but makes it a little easier, for them to do their thing because it doesn't have to go through blockages. Constipation is so bad that I have friends who are plumbers, okay, and what they'll see that sticks in the plumbing that clogs up the plumbing in your house is undigested food and undigested capsules from the wrong kinds of things. With the Cascara, it blends in and absorbs into the system and it loosens up stuff that help not only the bowel movement, but also helps move gas out of the body. Because the gas blockages was part of what bloats us up from the fermentation and spoiling, which is why sometimes if somebody releases some gas, they're like, oh my, you're doing like this. That's that fermentation and spoiling from the waste that's been sitting in the body over this extended period of time.
Okay. So someone, they can get the tonic. I mean, it's not the tonic. People can get the Cascara in capsule format. I'm going to assume that there's going to be directions on whatever brand that someone gets. There should be directions on that box. Should be directions, so they should follow those directions. Are there any concerns or risks?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anytime you're dealing with an area that's clogged and you don't know the side effects, or you're on medication, or you have certain conditions, that means it's something that you can't take. Now, and I had that listed. If you have GI disorders or gastrointestinal disorders, if you have ulcerated colon, those will irritate. Appendicitis, which is basically stuff stuck, stomach ulcers, one of the things that's nice about Cascara, though, is it helps loosen and soften up the food waste or waste in the body that can help move it out of the system, especially even when you have hemorrhoid problems. Because typically hemorrhoid problems come from people who are straining to try to get the bowels to move.
Right.
And stuff is just stuck. I mean, because it can literally, that waste literally can get as hard as concrete. You got waste, gas, in layers in our intestine. And then say the opening for our intestines is like this. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller till it's like a pinhole. And that's waste is hardened along the lining of the large and small intestine. So when you take something that's a powerful laxative, it's pushing up that waste, to the back area of your body, which is causing hemorrhoids, which is like a problem because in order to deal with the hemorrhoids, you got to get bowel movement. But that pushing with stuff to help the bowels to move, is contributing to the growth of the hemorrhoid. The Cascara is one of those things, and then our fat burner is something else we'll go to at another time. Softens stuff up, helps the hemorrhoid shrink because you're getting the bowel movement. The only way the hemorrhoids permanently go away is when you have consistent bowel movement and you're not having to strain. I've had people that have literally said that they sit in the bathroom 30, 40, 45 minutes every morning trying to get a little bit of something moving.
Yeah.
Well, drinking more water will help, doing the Cascara, but then even with the Cascara, it's not something you want to do every day. If you stop, you might want to do a couple of days in a row.
Okay.
Then you want to do every other day because it can be too much too quick. So we want to get the body to start to respond right with the Cascara, and it will do a lot to help just soften it up. Very, very similar to Correctol is something that's over-the-counter chemical, that was designed to soften. Sometimes it works with people temporarily, but then when you stop, the body clogs back up.
What about? So there are some people who, on their normal day-to-day, they're going on a reasonably healthy basis, but as soon as they start to travel, boom! It's like their body just stops, and potentially for as long as they're traveling, which could be a week, they don't go, and then when they get home, they get back to normal. Is this an herb that would have any effect on that, or is that that scenario I just described a different type of situation?
Well, the two things: the Cascara will do it. One of our products will help. Drinking a lot of water will help. Sometimes people when they're driving, they don't want to drink a lot of water because they have to maybe make frequent stops. But then there's also the mode of traveling. If you're sitting and driving for long periods of time, that sitting motion, like this is the seat, and you're sitting on your prostate and on your colon, and it's smashing it down. I mean, long-term driving contributes to prostate problems because stuff is not moving.
Okay.
Long-term driving crushes and flattens the intestinal system, where bowel can't move through an area that's flat and not open like this. Okay? So long-term driving can contribute to that. Long plane rides, if you're going overseas, say, you're leaving this country and you're traveling to Europe or to Africa or something, and you're on that plane for long hours, I tell people, you get up, you move around, you stretch a little bit if you can't. You stop frequently just to move the body and loosen it up. But when you're like, I gotta get there. Well, what you've done is you put pressure on your colon, and then stuff doesn't move the way it needs to. And then you add stress, people on a deadline or just stressed with driving or being in a car, that stress takes a lot of that nerve energy that would be used to help the bowels to move, and it's transferred over to deal with the stored up stress.
Okay.
In the body. Am I making sense with this?
Yeah, you are, and I do wonder about the stress. I do wonder about, a lot of people get into a time pattern. Their body gets like a body clock, and when you travel, often your whole schedule gets totally thrown off. You're out to be at the airport at 5 in the morning, and it all just gets thrown out the wheel. And in a little bit of my research, I guess some doctors have indicated they think it could be as much psychological, that you're not comfortable, that you're in unfamiliar areas.
That's a major part of it. And then a lot of times, people don't pack enough good, healthy, high-fiber food to munch on while they're traveling. They're stopping in, I won't name any, truck stop kind of places, but people know what's out there on the road. and you're eating all that junk which only clogs and constipates you while you're driving, or some of the real traditional truck stops where the truckers eat, Uh, so when you're traveling on the road, you want to pack some fruit. You want to have your water. You want to have your vegetables. If you're doing foods, you want high fiber foods like brown rice or wild rice or quinoa, fresh salmon or stuff that you can munch on. Now, one of the things you don't want to eat when you're traveling is nuts. Another thing you don't want to eat a lot of at one time is nuts, especially peanuts, but nuts, period, because fruits and vegetables and whole grains have some cleansing ability to help the bowels move, and then along with taking the cascara, it kind of works as a good match. Nuts have no blood or bowel cleansing quality to it. They're an energy food.
Okay.
You take that in a small portion. They build the muscles, they build the tone. But if you eat too much, it will lock up your bowels. Now, I'm going to give a personal example because, people love stories. And when I make mistakes, in my learning process over the years, people say, well, you're telling me what you did wrong. I'm telling you what I did wrong because I'm human too, as I was learning the process of taking care of your health. Now, this is like a few years ago because,
Okay.
I'm 72 now, so we're going to say it's been a few decades ago.
All right.
And I was living in Houston, and they had this health food store, David. They had these tamari roasted cashews. Oh man, that was phenomenal taste.
Okay.
I mean, they were I was eating a pound of the tamari roasted cashews every day.
You were a
Sometimes
good
more than-
customer.
Oh yeah, I'll always be back. No,
You buy a
Only
pound of
one-
this a day.
I'm munching on them because I think it was the tamari taste with the cashew. I ate and ate and ate until it locked up my bowels like cement. The pain, the hemorrhoids, the clogging was so unbelievable. I mean, I was laying on the floor next to the bed, almost in tears because what happened was my bowels wouldn't move. It shut down.
Oh, wow.
It shut down, and I'm trying to, take some herbs, take some enemas. My body was laughing at me. Ha 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 ha. You shouldn't eat as much. It reached a point, and I'm saying this because a lot of people who experience this but don't like talking about it, and I'm bringing stuff out. That pain was so bad. I'm going to be honest with you. I got down on my knees and said, Lord, just take me.
No.
just I'm through.
Well,
just
I'm
want-
glad he didn't.
I'm glad he didn't either, but I mean, it can feel like that. I'm emphasizing this even more than the Cascara to understand how effective the Cascara could be with these conditions that we create. Now, constipation, all by itself, elevates your blood pressure, elevates your blood sugar, increases the cholesterol, damages your heart, slows down the body's metabolism, affects memory and concentration, will end up building this fungus and bacteria that eventually can create precancerous and cancerous cells in the body. We call that auto-intoxication in the natural healing realm. The body's intoxicated on its own waste. So if you're not having a regular bowel movement, you want to do something. The fiber foods, the water, the cascara, used right, not every day, 2 days in a row maybe. Every other day would work, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, to help the body be able to help itself. Then when you're drinking the water and you're doing your exercise and you're doing your fiber foods and stuff, that combination along with something like the cascara ends up being safe. There are other herbs which we'll go through in some of the tonics and stuff that does that same thing. But the subject today is an herb that, I know a lot of people have never heard of before, Cascara Sagrada, because it can be effective and it can be something good that you travel with, that won't have you side of the bed say, Lord, take me, kind of stuff, because it's helping loosen up that stuff and makes that stuff work so much better.
So, Doc, this is why I love that we do this series. There's so many herbs. Like, it looks like there's hundreds of them. I mean, I looked up a lot of the herbs in the encyclopedia. There's hundreds of them. It's going to be really interesting to see, which ones you choose to talk about and for us to learn about. But this was a new herb for me, and it sounds like it potentially has some benefit for people.
Well, potentially anything that helps the bowels move safely without the cramping and irritation and discomforts, because you don't need that, is going to help. Our fat burner, which one of these podcasts we're going to go through, helps do that. The Cascara is an independent herb in capsule form, that will help do that. There's some herbs that are really good, and there's some that are laxatives, but they can be destructive based on your health condition and based on your eating habits and stuff that is not worth doing if you're not going to do the other things you need to do for your body. Water is very important because water softens up stuff. So when you're drinking plenty of water and doing fiber and you're doing something like the Cascara, you're getting that good movement. Now, the beauty is, once you get that 2, maybe 3 bowel movements a day because you change your eating habits and lifestyle, you're not required to do the Cascara all the time. If you still have weight and stuff, you want to do it maybe once, twice a week to help accelerate the movement and help the body remove waste from the system.
Perfect. All right, Doc, if anyone has any questions about this herb or any other questions, how can they reach you?
Well, you can call me at 404-943-1171. That number again is 404-943-1171. And like I've said in previous podcasts, you want extra time with me on the phone. You got to mention that, you're a podcast viewer and you've liked us and all that kind of other stuff.
Because you will hold such a person in very high esteem.
Absolutely. Because that's somebody that, I have two kind of people. Both people want change. Some people are not willing to do the things they need to do to improve their health and make change. Then there's a group of people that are willing to listen and do whatever needs to be done. I like those people more. I deal with both, but I like those people more because it says, I'm listening, I'm learning, I want to learn more, I want to prevent issues or improve my health. And those are the people that get that extra consideration because you're serious. And because if you're spending time looking at our series of podcasts, that means you're trying to learn. You're trying to navigate where you need to go, and I can help you on that path. Now, I do consultations as well for those who like a whole program. But if you're calling for general questions, I'm open to help guide you in the direction you need to go.
Thank you, Doc. Another great episode. All right, spoiler alert for next week. Doc's Herbal Corner, next week, we're going to talk about eucalyptus. Can't wait. All right, till next week, I'm your host, David Malouf, exploring adventures in good health. That does it for this episode of Adventures in Good Health. We would like to hear from you regarding this podcast and any suggestions you have for future podcasts. You can reach us at Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe and leave a rating or a review.